Nintendo smash ROM sites! Rah! So Nintendo is suing ROM sites on Tuesday, July 24, 2018. Well, they sued them previously, and they'll probably sue them in the future. So Nintendo went after two very prominent ROM sites to shut them down. Shut them both down. They both closed down and complied with Nintendo's request or demands, if you want to think of it that way. So Nintendo basically now is taking this a little bit more seriously. Now, the NES Edition, the NES Classic Edition, and the Super NES Classic Edition are both things that they have released recently. They have sold very well. So Nintendo, all of a sudden, little light bulb goes on above their head and says, "Oh, you mean we could still make money on these?" Yes, you can, Nintendo. You can absolutely still make money on these because people love nostalgia. You know, people, they remember things fondly and they want to go back and play them. Like the NES Classic, you package 30 games for 60 bucks, and the Super NES Classic, I think, was 20 games for 80 bucks. But the Super Nintendo Classic came with an extra controller, whereas the NES Classic Edition only comes with one controller. So, is this going to start a trend? And can Nintendo really stop the ROM sites? Let's answer the second question first. No, you can't. Because while you may have gotten those two websites to stop putting up their ROMs, here's the thing. All they got to do, start another website. Their ROMs still exist. They still have them. All they got to do is start another website and host them somewhere else. Very simple. And then you have got to try to find them again. And even once you find them, once again, take down the site, put it up again somewhere else. Simple. I guarantee you it doesn't take them very much to start the site. And whenever you're searching for ROM sites online, eventually you're going to stumble onto theirs again. Because when you search for a ROM site, I'm sure some ROM sites will come up to the top. Nintendo will probably go after them, shut them down, and then eventually your site will become the most popular and Nintendo will go back after you again. But all these ROM sites, the ROMs exist. Unless you can go physically to where they are and take all of their computer hardware, you're never going to stop these ROMs. You're just never going to stop these ROM websites. They're pretty much going to exist for eternity unless somehow you can find where they are, get your hands on them, sue them, and really start putting the screws to them. But a lot of times I don't think these people use real addresses. They use phony emails that don't go really anywhere. So finding these guys is very tough to do. And I'm sure as long as Nintendo sits there and goes, take them down, they'll take them down because they know they can put them back up. It's no big deal to them. So do I think you can fully stop the ROMs? Probably not. Not unless the government wants to get super involved. And even then, I don't see the government trying to get super involved and putting, some kind of a task force together to stop people that are selling illegal ROMs online. So here's my other problem with Nintendo, though, going after these ROMs. Just on the NES, there are over 800 games that were released on the NES. 800 licensed games that were released. If you are going to shut down all of these ROM sites, Nintendo, are you going to release all of the games in your library? Not just the few that you like or the more popular ones. Are you going to release them all? If not, then you need to stop going after these ROM sites. Because people want to play the games, and if you're not going to sell the games again, in any way, shape, or form, why are you shutting them down? Those cartridges haven't been made for over 30 years. They haven't been. Nobody's made those cartridges in over 30 years. You're talking about maybe like RBI Baseball or maybe some of these maybe a game that's even really obscure. You know, even like Baseball Simulator 1000, which is one of my all-time favorite games. Nobody's made a new cartridge version of that since the 80s. So if you're going to shut down these ROM sites, are you going to release, whether it's digital or physical in some kind of a way, are you going to release all of these ROMs? Are you going to release some kind of an NES Classic Edition that you can plug into the internet and then pay to have ROMs downloaded onto it? And that means going through your entire library. That means you got to get Capcom's permission, Konami's permission. You got to get a permission from probably a lot of people. Not to mention if some of the games are licensed. If any of the RBI baseball games had the MLB license, guess what? It's probably ran out by now. So those old games don't still have access to the license so Nintendo really can't sell them anyway. So I think Nintendo should basically go after these ROM sites and go, look, we have certain games that we plan on re-releasing, some of the most popular games. We're going to work with Capcom, we're going to work with Konami, we're going to work with Sunsoft, we're going to work with Hudson Soft, we're going to work with all these different places. And we have a certain amount of games that we want to release. Now, there's a lot of stuff on the system we don't care about. And you can keep those ROMs if you want, because we're never going to re-release those anyway. So that, to me, is my only real problem with Nintendo going after everybody. Because there are certain games that are lost. They're not easy to find. They weren't popular, so Nintendo's probably not going to re-release them on a system. Now, if Nintendo comes forward and says, every game that was ever released or licensed on the NES and the Super NES and the N64 and all these other ones, we are going to re-release these in digital form on our website so that you can download them and buy them, and maybe they're $2, $3 a piece. I don't know what they would charge. Knowing Nintendo, they charge $6 a piece. But that's my only problem with this. If you're not going to re-release all the games, you know, all those cartridges are just sitting in limbo. Nobody really, sometimes you can't even find these things. So it's not fair to the people that didn't get to play. There were people that weren't born in the 80s that want to play these games, but they can't. They don't exist for them to buy. And some of the games are massively expensive, and Nintendo doesn't get that money. If you have a copy of Restaurant Panic and it costs $300 or $400 online, Nintendo doesn't get any of that money. So why does Nintendo care? If you're not going to release Restaurant Panic on some kind of an NES Classic Edition or on the eShop on Nintendo, then why do you care if a ROM is being sold? So I would like to see Nintendo kind of hash that out a little bit. If Nintendo has a plan to re-release every game that's ever been on one of their machines, that's ever been licensed on any machine they've ever done, I'm good with Nintendo and those original companies making a little bit of money. Believe me, I'm good. They made it. It's their property. So if they can make a little bit more money to help sustain them, I'm good with it. But if you're not going to do it, if you're not going to re-release these games, don't stop the people that want to play them. Because let's face it, most people don't download ROMs anyway. Like me, I know I could probably do it. I just don't. Because, you know, I would rather play them on a TV in some kind of a form. I would rather download, like, you know, I have the Super NES Classic Edition, and I have the NES Classic Edition being pre-ordered because they're going to make more of these. So I like having them in a little bundle like that, and I'm willing to pay the $60 or $80 to get these little things, to get these little bundles and play them. I don't really care about downloading the whole NES library or Super NES library for free. I really don't, but I know there are some people that do, and there are some games that you are never going to find out in the wild. So it's not fair to Nintendo to shut those down so that nobody can ever play those again. But if Nintendo wants to re-release everything and charge a couple of bucks for each game, I'm all for it. You know, I have no problem downloading some. I'd love to have a really good copy of Baseball Simulator 1000 I could play on my Switch or something. That'd be awesome. I'd love to do that. But, you know, as it sits, Nintendo is going to go after these sites. Nintendo, once they get an idea in their head, they're going to run with it. And the thing is, don't be surprised if Sony, Microsoft, and Sega, and Sega maybe not, because they seem more giving, because they're not in the console market anymore. But don't be surprised if Sony and Microsoft maybe start doing the same thing, because remember, Sony and Microsoft are both giant corporations, and Microsoft does do backwards compatibility. So the more of their library from the original Xbox that they can get onto the Xbox One, they're going to want to make that money themselves. Now, I don't know how many ROM sites are out there for the Xbox and the PlayStation 2, but at some point, if those get solved and everybody can download those for free, Sony and Microsoft are going to get mad too. And they're going to want their piece of the pie, because Sony sells PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 and they have PlayStation 3 games that they sell on the PlayStation 4. So they're not going to want, although I'm not sure about PlayStation 1. I think there's a couple. Yeah, because I got Final Fantasy 7, I think, on the PlayStation 4, and that's a PlayStation 1 game. So don't be surprised. Nintendo is not going to be the only one that does this, but you are truly never going to be able to make the ROM sites go away. Not unless some much more strict laws are released that basically make it so that if you do this, they're going to find you and they're going to come get you. Because, you know, if basically all they're going to do is send something to your email that says stop doing this or we'll arrest you, they'll sit there and go, well, you don't know where I am. You don't know who I am. So how are you going to arrest me? So, like I said, I'm all for all these companies still making their money. I'm never going to begrudge anybody their money. But if you're not going to ever re-release the games, it's not fair to the people that might still want to play them, that can't find the physical copies anymore. They don't know how to get them, or they're too expensive and they're outlandish prices that the original companies aren't going to benefit from it anyway. Don't hog all that. Don't squish all that to where you can't play it ever again. Either re-release everything, re-release your entire libraries again, so that we can all partake in whatever we choose. And I realize it's probably a daunting task. I mean, you know, there are thousands of games across all these platforms, so it's a daunting task. But, you know, don't just try to shut down every ROM site just so that you can re-release a few choice games and shut down every ROM site with every ROM. There's got to be a happy medium in there somewhere. But like I said, good luck to Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. Those ROM sites are hard to find, and I guarantee you they'll send this to a ROM site, and the ROM site will go, okay, we'll pull them down, and then they'll rename it something else, put it up, and eventually people will stumble onto them again. You might even have to make it to where if you're found, it may have to become a thing where the person that downloads the ROMs is the one who gets in trouble. I don't know how you would even track that even, but, you know, the internet is a place where I'm guessing you can still track these things and find people's computers and hard drives that have them, and then if you punish the people that are downloading the ROMs, then those people go, well, wait a minute, it's like, well, yeah, you're right, I shouldn't have done it, but I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Well, it was. But I'm hoping there's a happy medium. I would love to see every game ever made released in some shape or form. Even if it's a bunch of little classic consoles, or a little classic console that you can connect to the internet and connect to their website, and then pay for, you know, pay $20 for like 15 ROMs, or pay, you know, $50 for 100 ROMs, and they just sit there, you know, do little package things. It's like, and you just go, oh yeah, pick that, pick that, pick. That would be cool too. But if you're not going to release your entire libraries, you know, like I said, emulation is what it is. If you are somebody that enjoys doing emulation, and you like having them, you know, like downloading stuff to your hard drive and playing the games on a current, you know, your current computer or whatever, Just understand that it is technically illegal if you don't own the physical copies. But I don't really know actually the true legality of it. I can't even say that it's really illegal. I don't know if there's really a law out about it. I'm guessing it's copyrighted material and taking it for free, but it's also copyrighted material that's the licenses have ran out and the machines haven't been released in years. But then think of it this way, music. There's music from the 50s, 60s, way on back that, remember, Napster and things like that got shut down because they were giving away all this music for free. And that's, it got shut down even though that music had been released decades earlier. But that's a little bit different because I think those, you could always find a CD of greatest hits or even a cassette of greatest hits. So you'd have to let me know what you guys think. Do you think that Nintendo, this is a futile effort and they should just release these machines? Because think about it. They release these little machines and people like me and casual gamers buy them. They buy them because they think they're cool and they want them and they just go, yeah, 30 games on there. That's awesome. It looks neat. So I think there's still a big enough audience. I mean, those ROM sites exist. And those NES and Super NES Classic Editions sell incredibly well. Same with the stuff that even At Games makes that isn't always the best. The old Atari flashbacks and the Genesis flashbacks and things like that. They sell well enough. And they're not always the best machines. So it seems to me like there's room for all of this. There really is. I think Nintendo and Sega and Sony, I would love to see Sony put out a little PlayStation Classic Edition. Could you imagine that? Some of Sony's best stuff from their early years. Here's my only problem though. Licensed sports games. A lot of the games that I played back on those systems were licensed sports games. How do you get around that? Because they can't do that. They can't. The licenses are dead. They can't release the game. Like, I would love to play the original Forza Motorsport. And I'm always hopeful that Forza Motorsport will be one of the games that they make backwards compatible from the original Xbox to the Xbox One. But I understand that there are a lot of licensing problems from all the car makes and the car brands and whatever else is in the game. It's very tough. And probably way too expensive for Microsoft and Turn 10 Studios to just go in there and relicense everything for a game that's probably not going to sell that well, on as a a callback to an earlier time. So, like I said, tell me what you guys think. I mean, I'm just kind of rambling through this. I mean, I don't know all the stuff. I don't know everything. I mean, there's got to be more to this. There's got to be a happy medium. Maybe you guys know the happy medium. Maybe you guys know why Nintendo's actually doing this, and maybe they have plans to release every game. Maybe we're going to get an NES Classic Edition that has, like I said, the capabilities to download all the ROMs onto it, but from Nintendo's eShop. Or maybe the Switch you can download everything from the Switch. Or maybe we'll get an NES Classic Edition that has an SD card slot, and you'll be able to download all the games, put them onto the SD card, and then put it into your NES Classic Edition and play the games on your NES Classic Edition. There's got to be ways to do this where you can still release your entire library, because let's face it, there's still a call to have the old classic stuff still be played. And there's a lot of nostalgia out there, and even a lot of young people, they like to look back at some of that stuff and see where gaming started, and even if it's out of a curiosity, they like to see where it started, because you know what, a lot of those games were fun. They really were fun games. And even for the kids nowadays, you could even put like a 4 or 5 or 6 year old kid who may not be as proficient at a first-person shooter, but you can sit there and go, play Mario. You might really enjoy Super Mario Brothers, and let them grow up in gaming like most of us did. We started out small and worked our way up to these powerhouse systems that we're playing now. So let me know what you think in the comments below. With all that being said, to the troops, past, present, and future, thanks for the freedom.